I think that the latest or ongoing energy crisis is a very great lesson to many countries, including Japan and Asian countries. Namely, that before the crisis, that the energy policy is centered on the climate policy or how to decarbonize our energy system. It's very important, but after the crisis, every country realized how important energy security is. So we are now prioritizing the energy security policy while we need to understand the importance of protecting our environment in terms of CO2 emission reduction. The current higher energy prices has a double effect. In the short term, because of the priorities given to the energy security and energy access and affordability, we are going to use every possible options, including the coal and coal-fired power generation. So under the circumstance, in terms of energy mix, I think that current higher energy prices has a negative implication on the CO2 emission reduction. But in the medium and longer term, every countries are keen to change or upgrade the energy system, reducing the reliance on fossil fuels by introducing the more renewables and the nuclear power and hydrogen and electrification, which means that enhancing energy security is CO2 emission reduction. So I think that there are two ways of looking at the current situation. The recent announcement of the new energy policy by government, including EU, United States, and Japan, all are seen as a serious effort to reduce CO2 emission while enhancing energy security, which is very important. But I think it's still a lot of uncertainty remains in terms of meeting their 2030 goals. Of course, every government is making a maximum effort, but of course, much depends on our economy, depends on prices, and the social, say, responses. So things are still uncertain. Energy is an essential commodity, and energy prices is very important for our civic life and economic activity. And in a sense, when energy price increase significantly, it has a regressive effect, which means that lower income people and lower income countries, the damage is more significant. That's why even in the industrialized economies, that energy price hike since that last half of second half of last year create numbers of energy subsidy program in industrialized economy, and this is the case even of course for the lower income country. So under the circumstance that many governments in the world need to address the higher energy cost problems, the investment issues are very significant to have the market stability and the current turmoils. But that as is discussed, that there is a lot of uncertainty over the future of investment climate. In particular, that in case of fossil fuel investment, longer-term demand trajectory is too uncertain. When government and industry made a serious effort to reduce CO2 emission, what's going to happen for the demand for coal, oil, natural gas, LNG is very, very uncertain, and under the circumstances that investment climate is very, very difficult. The problem is CO2 emissions, not hydrocarbon. So I think that when that hydrocarbon utilization is or in other words, that the decarbonization of hydrocarbon can be materialized, I think that it's a compatible way. Of course, as I mentioned, that the issue is CO2 emission or GHG emission, not the hydrocarbon itself. So I think that this kind of inclusive concept, inclusive approach should be necessary. Up to the first half of last year, I think at least that the global financial circles are very cautious, or sometimes it's a very negative approach towards the fossil fuel investment. But after the higher energy prices and Ukraine crisis, I think that there is some gradual changes seen in terms of the attitude towards the fossil fuel investment. To secure that global market stability, which is very important, I think that securing necessary and appropriate investment will be the key. I think that the financial institutions, including banks, I hope that they're gradually understanding that these issues. The key will be the minimizing the cost of transition. And to minimize the cost, I think that respective condition surrounding each country can be different. So I think that firstly, we need to be flexible, and we need to be pragmatic, and we need to be inclusive. I think that the path is not a good concept. There are multiple pathways towards the decarbonization while enhancing energy security. And if, for example, Asian country depends heavily on the fossil fuel, including coal, how to reduce coal reliance by, for example, natural gas first or LNG first, and then goes to more deep decarbonization will be the key. By that way, and also using the scale and using the global effort, we should minimize the transition cost. I think that will be the key to success for achieving our energy transition. The current geopolitical reality will become very, very difficult, and I think the potentially kind of hindrance for the global effort. But I think that to address the global order or global interest, including the climate change protection or global energy market stability, we need to work together. And I think that there are some new effort or some new kind of mechanism may be needed to address this situation. If we recall that 1970 oil crisis, with this experience that the International Energy Agency was created to reconstruct that coordination among major consuming countries, I think that the ongoing crisis and emerging that geopolitical divide, I think we need to have a more new idea. One of the most possible difficulty for the coming winter and beyond is, say, the potential zero-sum game conflict to secure the energies. In Europe, many people start to believe that they will survive this winter, but after the winter is over, without any shortage, probably that the market situation beyond 2023, 2024 continue to be very volatile and unpredictable. And there's a circumstance if things become more serious and have some kind of zero-sum game conflict to secure energy supply, this may lead up to the similar situation with the 1970 crisis. I think that we should avoid that kind of situation, but I think there is a possibility. The G7 as a kind of platform to address that G7 countries' problem, but also we should be responsible for the global problem, global stability, including the climate change protection and energy security. So under the circumstance that we G7 countries need to discuss and try to find a solution how to enhance energy security of G7 countries, but also how to secure the global energy market stability. I think for this purpose, Japan needs to play a role as a host country, and I hope that the government of Japan can be successful to address this very serious global problem. the most difficult part is how to address the energy security and climate change together or in parallel. And situation surrounding each country like United States or EU or Japan has similarity but also some differences. And depending on differences, I think that we need to address the different questions and in a different way. We had a discussion on IRA today. It's very significant for United States, but also it has a global implication. So we have to be very careful what's going to happen in each country while seeing from the global perspective.